Hi, I'm Jerry Sargent and welcome to Cosmic Truth. In this show, we're going to be talking to a number of individuals from across the globe, men and women, insiders that have stepped forwards to tell you, the human race, the truth. We're going to be discussing extraterrestrials, space programs, government issues. We're going to be taking you deep inside Area 51 for a grand tour. We're going to be talking about different levels of density, raising consciousness. We're going to be discussing the ascension process. We're going to be talking about so many different interesting and informative topics. We're going to be sharing information that you must know. Humanity needs to know this information because this information will set you free. In this episode, we're back with Trevor in his home, and he's going to be sharing with us an interesting story. When he went to the United States of America several years ago, he went to give a talk for the 388 bomb group. When he went to that talk, he was pulled to the side by a military officer and told that he was going to be going on a plane to a secret location. That secret location ended up being Area 51. This is an incredible story. In this journey, Trevor's going to share this story with us. In 2008, you had a visit to Area 51.
Yeah.
And you met reptilians, Draco reptilians, tall whites, 3 different species of greys. You were taken down into laboratories where they showed you splicing of extraterrestrials and human genetics, and some of the sights you saw were completely horrific. Now, to get to this stage, what happened? Because obviously you left this Star Wars project, you became a historian. So it was actually researching this Aphrodite project that led you to being in Area 51 so many years later.
Yes.
What is the Aphrodite project? What kind of research did you do, and how did you end up in Area 51?
Well, the Aphrodite project was a World War II project by the American 8th Air Force, and also the US Navy had an Aphrodite project before, but they called it Anvil. The Aphrodite project was actually named after a butterfly named the Aphrodite butterfly, which grows in North America, and it migrates from New York State through to the mountain ranges of Oregon. It migrates across the United States, and the name given to the project was by Colonel Jimmy Doolittle. And the idea was, if the atomic bomb had failed in Japan, which ended the war, and the war had been relegated to a standoff between Japan and the United States, where it's physical man-to-man fighting, the idea was to use drones loaded with high explosive. By this I mean about 10 tons of explosive, or 21,000 pounds, and they'd be flown to targets in Japan under remote control by a mothership aircraft. The idea was to save American lives and end the war as quickly as possible. But Western Europe was actually the test program for it, to get the system to work as a weapon system and test it under actual combat conditions, so they could be developed for use against Japan should the atomic bomb had failed. And they went to a base in Firstfield in South Norfolk, where they put these drones together, and they did various research. They would do many test flights against bridges in the area. They chose railway bridges. There's one near Thranderson, the village of Thranderson in South Norfolk they used. There's another one in Disson, crosses Victoria Road. They used that to practice on. And you get people running indoors thinking the aircraft was about to crash, and they were just coming in at low level and down to about 150 feet. And they wouldn't be carrying explosives doing the testing. They only just had simulated weight. They carried about 10 tons of sandbags, so they could simulate the weight of the explosive and make it probably just a little bit safer. And they had originally designed to test these island structures in the North Sea. The target was Heligoland Island, where the Germans had a U-boat pen there, but they wanted to see if they could use that to destroy it. They also had the V3, which was being constructed by the Germans in Seine-Mimaiac in northern France, where they had these long-range rockets which could be fired against London, and Hitler had boasted that he could fire 2,000 of these every 24 hours, raining down on London, to try and break the morale of the London people, or the British people. They also had various V2 sites in northern France. Witherns was one of them. It's now a museum. The French government had, after the war, had decided to put in the museum as a monument to the thousands of French, Polish, Czechoslovakian slave workers who died there during its construction. But these structures never fired any missiles, they never were completed, although they were attacked by the Aphrodite units. And this is basically what this project was about.
And where are the Aphrodite units now? Are they decommissioned?
Oh, they don't exist. But the technology was used after the war to develop the drones that you hear about on the news, and the Reaper, and the other one, the name escapes me.
So the ones that go into war zones and check things out.
They've used them in Afghanistan, they've used them in the later Iraqi wars, and but that technology went to them because it's just, it's the same thing, but it's just with modern technology, was just much more reliable and makes it a more practical proposition to go that way with a weapon system.
So you're involved in this, not involved, but you researched this Aphrodite project, so you knew it inside out, you'd researched it for 20 years.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you get communication.
Yes.
From who?
I located some of the veterans in the United States, and I was amazed to find there was quite a few of them still alive. And
so you found them?
Yeah, just located them. I shared my work with other historians in Britain, and who were also researching the same material. We swapped information, and they were already in contact with some of those veterans, and it had like a snowball effect, where they then put me in contact with other veterans, and they tell me what their experiences were and what they knew, and I felt duty bound to share with them what I knew. And they think, "Oh, we didn't know this," and began to answer some of the questions that they'd always wondered about. Because
so you were sharing a lot of information that they just didn't have a clue of.
Yeah, we just had information exchange between us.
Okay. And
they turned around and said this in told getting in contact with other veterans, because they still some of them still kept in contact with each other, and because some of them lived quite close to each other, because in New York State you had Ellison Beck, who lived in Jamesville, about 20 miles from Syracuse in New York State, and then you had Ensign John Demden Sr., who was with the US Navy project, lived 6 miles away. But they'd met each other by accident after the war, and they only realised they only lived 6 miles apart, so they kept in contact until they both passed away. So they became friends for well over 40, 50 years.
So you're in contact with these veterans.
Yeah.
And then what happened after this? Because you had all this information, and it led to you going to Area 51 and having some other experiences.
Yeah. How did you feel about being a member of the 388th Bomb Group Association in the United States? I said, well, I can't see them having me because I'm not of sufficient worth in my research to warrant such an honour. To me it was such a privilege to be allowed that. And they said, well, you've got to think about this. He said, no one else knows what you know. So you're teaching us as well as we're teaching you. So they approached the 388th Bomb Group Association on my behalf in the United States, within the United States, and they said, well, yeah, we'll have him on board. They told him what I told them, and they said, well, yeah, we don't have his research. They have their own database and their own website, but none of the Aphrodite stuff is there. There is some there now, but there wasn't at that particular time. And we were able to provide through the American historians. They put me in touch with the American historians for the 388 Bomb Group. We began to work together, And they said, well, okay, you've been granted life membership as an associate member of the 388 Bomb Group Association. We have a reunion. We have a reunion every year, and this year it's, or next year, but particularly the next one, at Ogden, Utah. And I said, oh, okay. He said, do you think you'll be able to attend? I said, well, I'd like to come. He said, will you come and do a talk for us? I said, yeah, I'd love to.
And that was on the Aphrodite project?
That was on the Aphrodite project.
Okay.
I think that's just the Aphrodite project. And I said, by the way, I've got some other news for you. I'd done some searching on the internet and I'd found the Hill Air Force Base Aerospace Museum on their website. And they said, well, I think you ought to contact their courier, Captain...
their courier?
The curator, sorry.
The what, sorry?
Curator of the museum.
Okay.
Captain Ralph Jackson of the United States.
And why would they
Air Force.
suggest that you contact him?
Well, because they wanted information to do a display on the Aphrodite project.
Okay.
And they were trying to put one together and they couldn't find any information. And so I said, would you be willing to contribute towards it? I said, yeah. I said, I also got another bit of news for you. I said, oh, what's that? I said, well, I've been in contact with the German Navy, of all people. They found one of the drones on the seabed.
One of the Aphrodite drones?
Yeah. And their divers are recovering some bits of it before the tide puts all the shingle and everything that's on the seabed back over the wreck. They've recovered some of it, and they've asked me, would you like a bit to put in that display? And they said, cool, yes please. So we were getting a bit from the
So they brought some of this Aphrodite drone up to the surface, gave it to you.
Yeah.
How did you get hold of it? They posted it?
No, I visited the site. I went out to see.
Where was this site?
I went to an air base where they had arranged to pick me up in one of their Tornadoes.
Okay.
Aircraft. And they flew.
Can I ask you why this is upsetting for you?
Remembering a lot of the veterans that are not around anymore.
Okay.
We became very, very good friends.
They just died of natural causes?
Oh yeah, nothing.
Okay.
Just old age.
Yeah.
Fashion old age and getting ill and pass them on.
Okay.
A German Tornado to pick me up and fly me to Germany.
Was it nice to get back in a plane again?
Yeah, it was. Great. Enjoyed it. It just completely changed. I wasn't what I'd remembered.
Yeah.
The technology, time had moved on, and we had to program everything manually, but they just put a cassette tape in, and they could pre-program that before the flight, get it all cleared, ready for their practice flights or whatever they had to do. Anyway, flew over there and flew low. The aircraft, and they waggled the wings. And we flew. We soon waving back. And then it's just a short boat trip, really, out from Germany and over to where the divers were. I couldn't speak to them because they were still under pressure. So they were in their bell. They were aboard the ship. They'd go down. They'd have a pressure vessel on board the ship, where they would be given 24-hour supply of helium-oxygen mixture because of the depth. And they couldn't decompress. They talked like Donald Duck, but you speak to them through a scrambler, so you could understand each other. They'd changed. There's the lightness of the helium gas. It changed as the vocal cords. It stretches them, so you get a high-pitched voice and you talk like Donald Duck, apparently. So they said, and which was weird. Fascinating blokes, nice people. And
they were German people?
Yeah, they're all German. And they presented me with a piece, and after having a chat with the divers, and some of them were down in the bell. You could see them through television on board in the labour control centre on the ship. So you can actually see the divers, and you see a bit of the wreck. They showed me what was exposed. And
so they brought a piece up, gave it to you. How big was the piece?
Oh, it was only a small piece, about so big. It was a bit of the crankcase casing from one of the engines, one of the inboard engines.
So they took you back on the plane?
Yeah, flew me back.
You went back to England?
Yeah.
You had the piece with you?
Yeah.
And then how did that piece end up in America?
I posted it by a secured and tracked postal services.
Okay.
And it went from the Royal Mail to Mildenhall, just up the road here, and it went by military air mail.
Because it was this piece sending it to the exhibition, to the museum, that actually got you this entrance into Area 51 eventually, wasn't it? That was one of the excuses that they gave you.
Well, it got me an invitation to they got much stronger invitations from the United States Air Force themselves. I wasn't the 388 bomb group anymore, but that was actually my main contact, as I said, was Ralph Jackson, who was serving with the US Air Force, and I then began to get letters from him, official letters with official Air Force stamps on them, and sent to my address in Diss, in Norfolk, and formally invited me to come over and said, if you have trouble financially, then we'll be happy to assist you, or even if need be, give you a flight on Military Airlift Command. And,
okay.
So
they invited you over to America?
Yeah, I was along with the veterans, and I went. In the end, I had the money to go with my own way, my own means anyway. So I paid, just booked a normal airfare from Gatwick. We flew from, and went from Gatwick to Atlanta, Georgia, and flew up to get an internal flight from Atlanta, Georgia, up to Syracuse, where I spent some time with Becky and some time with this Ellison Beck, but everyone called him Beck. He didn't like his proper name. His first name was actually Charles, but Ellison was his middle name, which he didn't mind, but he hated being called Charles. You know, and I met John Demlin, who only lived 6 miles away from him, so I stayed at John's for a week. I had a week with them, and it was good to have the chance to finally meet them rather than be on the end of a letter. It's just a pleasure and a joy to meet them. And we got to talk, and they told me a lot of things they didn't even tell their own family. It was just incredible. And that was that time when I began to realise just how well John Demlin got to know Joe Kennedy, who died on the US Navy project.
So was Joe Kennedy anything to do with the President?
Yes, it was
JFK?
His older brother.
It was his older brother?
Yeah, John Kennedy, President John Kennedy's older brother.
So how did President John Kennedy's older brother Joe die? This was on an Aphrodite project, yeah?
It's under the Aphrodite project, but it's the Amble project. It was, they had exactly the same equipment as the US Army Air Force, exactly the same, no different.
So Aphrodite was English, is British? And
no, it's American.
American.
It's all American.
Both were American. Why did they call them
American.
2 different names?
It's just so they could differentiate one against the other if they ever had to be used together. So they refer to them. 8th Air Force called their drones snowdrops after the white camouflage they were given over the top of the normal olive drab finish or bare metal bright aluminium finish, depending on the aircraft that they'd use, whether it's a B-17G or a B-17 F, which had been converted as a drone. So they called them snowdrops, and the Americans, the Navy team, just called them, they just said, well, we'd just be known as Anvil, because they had a sort of like a dry sense of humour, like most military bodies around the world, and they envisioned their drones as like someone dropping an anvil because of its destructive force on something sort of rather fragile or a target of some sort. It was kind of a bit of humour that they put in, so also a way they could tell between the Navy and the Air Force, or the Army Air Force, if they had to be used together. That's the only reason. But the US Navy flew the B-24 Liberator, while the 8th Air Force flew the B-17. Apart from that, everything's exactly the same.
So you're in America, you're at this hotel, there's this talk that you're going to give, you're with these old veterans, there's Royal Air Force people there. What happens next?
There wasn't no Royal Air Force people there.
Okay.
They were just United States Air Force and 388.
Oh, United States Air Force,
yeah,
my bad.
And just the United States Air Force and 388 Bomb Group Association and the veterans themselves, of course. And they used to have meetings in the evening where we'd all have get together social functions. We'd talk. They'd talk about the old days during the war, what they could remember, and they had good thing for serving U.S. Air Force members were invited.
And your wife and daughter with you?
Yes.
Okay.
On some of the occasions, they got a bit too much for Christine and Lisa, so they went back to the hotel room. They was all talking aeroplanes, so
Yeah.
you can understand that from their point of view. And I said, "Are you all right if I stay?" I said, "Yeah, come on, you know." And they'll think odd or rude if you don't. I said, "Okay." And I met Chuck Lawson. Now, Chuck Lawson is a photographer, and he's aviation and an art photographer. He does a lot of work with Zuni Indians.
Zuni Indians?
Yeah, in Arizona.
And who are they? Just a tribe in India?
Yeah, they're a tribe in India, but they're connected with extraterrestrials. He started to talk about the Aphrodite project, and it led on to, he said, "You've had a field in electronics, haven't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You also served with the RAF?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "What do you think of the airbase here?" I said, "It's huge," which it was. I mean, they had a railway track there 287 miles long just to move ordnance from one part of the airfield to another. I mean, it's on a scale you can't imagine. It took an hour to get from the main gate to the flight line in a bus, continuous drive. Let's give an idea how big it is. When they had the new F-35 coming in to replace the F-15 and the F-16 rather, in a few years' time, the building was 3.5 miles long just to write the software, but it catered for RAF, Royal Navy, US Navy, US Marine Corps, US Air Force, and God knows how many other air forces that might buy this aeroplane in the future to do all the software for the weapon systems on the aircraft. So they give you an idea of the scale of the area we're talking about. It's huge. The runway there was 12 miles long, the main runway, and there's movement detectors, God knows, radar. They've got radar which goes below the tips of the mountains which is in between a mountain range. And Salt Lake is just a little bit further over as you're going towards Arizona. And so Arizona's not that far away, it's only just a few minutes by jet fighter.
So you're in this hotel.
Yeah.
Your missus and your daughter, they're back because they're bored.
Yeah.
Doing their own thing. What happens next? How is it you get from the hotel to being taken? Obviously there's some conversations that took place. How did those conversations go, and how did you end up coming from this hotel where you're supposed to be doing a talk into Area 51? Let's get to the nuts and bolts of this.
Okay. I was just about to come to it. Remember, Chuck Lawson is also a computer programmer. He makes games as a hobby, and he liked to make games with flying different types of aircraft. And he had a B-17 simulation on his computer, and he said, "Would you mind having to go on that for us, Trevor?" I said, "Yeah, okay." And had to go on it. I was just flying his B-17 around, just having fun, really. Heard the US Air Force bloke behind me is a pilot. That confirmed what they wanted to know. And he was used, I believe he was used by them to sort of say, well, does this guy match what we know from his records? And I think it's that moment then when we'd agreed to do this talk the following day, during the day, on Hill Air Force Base. And they did a talk, the US Air Force, and then the 388 Bomb Group Association did their talk, and they invited veterans to come up and do a talk if they wanted to. You could talk about their experiences to serving them in today's USAF. And I sat there waiting patiently to be invited up for me to do my talk, but it didn't happen. And some of the veterans were sort of like ushered away from where I was sitting, so there were spare seats either side of me. And Bill Worthen say, "I've got to go and leave you, Trevor." He's one of the veterans I've been in contact with, another one, there were several of them. So glad to meet Bill, William Worthen. He said, "I've got to go and leave you now, I don't know why." He said to tell me that I've got to leave, and he said, "Some USAF personnel want to talk to you." I said, "Okay, fair enough," thinking they just wanted to know about the Aphrodite program. Unbeknown to me at the time, my wife and all the other veterans were back on the coach to go back to the from Hill Air Force Base to the Marriott Hotel where we were staying in Ogden, just a few miles away.
So no one said to them, Trevor's going to come back later or anything like that?
Not until they got back to the hotel. They said Trevor will be delayed. That's all they were told.
They didn't give your wife and daughter a reason?
No.
Was your wife and daughter concerned?
No, because I trusted them.
Okay.
They had no reason not to.
Okay. So then what happened next?
I was ushered by a female. She said, could you come with me and spare us some of your time? I said, yeah. I said, what have you got planned? I'm not going to do this talk, am I? She said, no, I'm afraid not. Something else has cropped up that we would like to show you. And thinking I'm just going to go into another build and say, hang on, well, perhaps I'm going to see a B-2, because there were B-2s there, the stealth bomber. But they were kept out of view. No one saw, didn't actually see the aircraft, but saw the building they were in. And I thought, oh, perhaps they're going to take me in there, let me see a B-2, that'd be quite something. You know, I was getting quite happy, quite excited, you know, I'm thinking, oh no, something quite different. I got in this blue Air Force car and made her laugh, so I got on the wrong side. I got on the driver's side, with which is the passenger side in England. So you know, they drive on the opposite side by mistake. She just thought that was funny, and so it's, you know, very light-hearted. You know, just talked in general. So what's it like in England? I told her, but it's about 20-25 minute drive to the flight line, and I thought, I remember this place and remember seeing the 388 Bomb Group Tactical Fighter Wing, the 388 Tactical Fighter Wing maintenance unit hangar, and where we'd been the day before. And in front of it was a Hercules. As we got closer, it had 999 on the nose. I thought, that's interesting. British Emergency Services. That's first what went through my mind. We parked up, saw the ramp at the back begin to lower as we got closer, and she parked up right underneath the tailplane, so you get literally out of the car, up the ramp onto the aircraft. Once inside, I just sat down in the webbing seats that run down your tail length of the fuselage, what we used for paratroopers, and some were in there, fully armed, full battle kit. You know, you had all in black. They had assault rifles, M16s, some were wearing Brownings, 9mm Brownings I've seen in the Armed Forces, British Armed Forces, and that told me one thing: they were American Delta Force. And they're the only ones I know of that uses that weapon in the American armed system, armed services. And I thought, that's odd, why am I with Delta Force troops? You know, I thought, that's odd. I started to get a little bit wondering what's in store for me at that point. And they said, we're taking for a short trip, and you know, we'll give you a tour around the aircraft. And we closed the back door down, fired up the engines, and had headsets on. I hear everything was going on. They just did everything you do in a normal aircraft, just flight, blah blah blah, and request permission to taxi, and they were given permission. Nothing out of the ordinary at all. We took off in the Hercules. That was fairly brisk because that was wasn't carrying any great weight, just a few people. And,
are they big planes, Hercules?
Yeah, 132 foot wingspan, 99 foot long, 4-engine Allison turboprop engines. We took off, became airborne, saw the desert going across the mountain range. We could see the Salt Lake, Bonneville Salt Lakes from beneath us. Then we start to head west and slightly north. And on the horizon, they were giving me a tour around the aircraft, and they said, can you see on the horizon? You can see from the cockpit, you see Las Vegas on the horizon. And then I started to get worried. Said, you come with us, look out the port window. When you look out the port window, there's an F-22. I expected to see an F-15 Eagle, or maybe an F-16, but not an F-22, their latest fighter.
What's the difference between an F-15 and an F-22? Why were you surprised to see an F-22?
Because it was such a new aircraft. It was completely new. At that time, they'd only just gone into service. And really it wasn't even common knowledge that they were in service. But I know they had a few gone into service from the information they'd sent me prior to going to America.
So you're in this Hercules, getting a tour.
Yeah.
And you look out one side and the other, and you've got two F-22 planes.
Yeah, they literally shoot me through the portal and say, "This is our escort." He said, "We're going into the desert," and he said, "Do Creek Air Force Base mean anything to you, or Tonopah, or Groom Lake Air Force Base?" And thinking through my mind was an American phrase, "Holy shit." And there was a gun by this time in my rib cage, my right rib cage. They said, "You never tell anyone about what you're about to see." He said, "We know you know a lot about the Aphrodite Project, a lot of the secretive stuff involved with it. You've been prevented from writing a book on the subject. I did try to publish a book, and I wondered why the publishers refused to publicise it. And they said it's because Kathleen Kennedy is a member of the Illuminati and put up $130 million to every publisher to say that, to make sure that they have a financial reward for not publishing it."
So you wrote the book?
No, I never wrote the book. I intended to write the book, but there was no point because I.
How did she know that you were going to write the book?
Through the research, I'd written a letter to Edward Kennedy, which was never answered. He was the only survivor of the original brothers.
Okay.
Still alive, you see, because.
So someone must have picked that letter up.
Yeah.
So you're in the Hercules.
Yeah.
They've got the gun in your ribs, and they're telling you this, that Kathleen Kennedy put this 130 million up.
Yeah, and they said, "If you ever tell anyone what you're about to see, they say, well, we'll make sure you don't survive." And bluntly as that, and I believed them. But the reason I'm doing this now is because I want to hit back for what's been done to my wife and how I have to live my life now, which I accept. And all the negative energy's gone. You know, they've meditated a great deal on it. But getting back to that story, we descended, they put the gun away. They just said, "We want to make things that we understand. We want to make sure we're very clear and we understand each other." And they said, "You're here for a reason, but we're not going to tell you what that reason is." And they put a camera in my hand and they said, "You will be shown what we want you to see and nothing else and nothing more. And you will take photographs where we tell you to take photographs." I said, "Okay, fair enough." But I said, "Why am I here?" They said, "We're not going to tell you. You're here for a reason, but we're not going to tell you."
How did you feel at this point?
Didn't understand what was going on, lack of control.
Scared, fearful?
A little bit, yeah.
Any excitement because you were going into Area 51?
Excitement going into... Have you ever had the experience of being frightened, angry, and excited at the same time? That was the only one I could describe it.
Okay.
And it was a mixture of everything, and it welled up. It was like spirals of emotions.
Yeah.
One minute you felt scared stiff, the next minute you felt excited because you're going to see something that very few people get to see, and then you think, what am I going to be taking pictures of? And that filled more fear, and then it went on as like a spiral inside your head.
And who had the gun in your ribs? A soldier?
One of the soldiers. I think
one of the Delta Force guys.
Yeah, he come up and he's so silent, and I weren't ready for it. I weren't expecting it. I just felt it there, and I weren't forceful, just enough to let you know it's there. And you look down, you think, "Oh God, you know, what have I let myself in for?" You know, and it's the first time I ever had a gun pointed at me, you know, physically against my body, and it was something I didn't really understand why they need to do that, to make their point so clear. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, why do they want me? I'm just a civilian now. I'm just got interested in history and, you know, try and put something together, and so people know that this project existed and people get to know the truth about World War II.
How's the landing? How's the descent? What was that like?
We just sat down. We'd already begun the descent. You know, you feel the aircraft descending, and the other two aircraft, I couldn't see outside then anyway, so I didn't.
Was the woman still with you, the Jenny lady?
No, she didn't get on board.
Okay.
I was sorry, I should have mentioned that. No, she stayed in the car and she drove off. She was just merely told to pick me up and deliver me there, and then she went off on her way to do whatever she had to do. She was no other part of this at all. We went in, descended into Area 51, landed on the runway. we thought that's strange because we seemed a long time before the wheels actually touched down. I think they're actually gone along the length of the runway in preparation for a short landing. And as soon as the wheels hit, got the main wheels down, the nose wheels down, went into reverse thrust from the propeller straight away, and you felt you were rocked forward by the thrust pulling you back, because you automatically go in the opposite direction. The trouble so you knew you had sudden braking because you were going forward, though the aircraft was still going forward, but it's going forward at a slower and slower rate. So it's heavy braking from the propellers. That's quite impressive, actually.
Yeah.
And you sat there because you're sitting in literally the aeroplane is that way, the nose is here, the tail is there. You're sitting a long way, so your body just goes like that. And the headphones were removed so I could go around, had to tour around the aircraft. I never had them on after that, from that point forwards. And that's one thing to mention. So I wanted to get as much detail as what I can. We parked up, got out of the aircraft, walked on the side of this huge hangar, had S4 on it. That was on the side.
S4?
S4. Yes, I was told stands for saucer.
Saucer, yeah.
Yeah. It actually stands for saucer. And so we went in through this doorway, which I thought would be inside of this S4 hangar. It wasn't, it's inside an elevator, and there's a staircase next to it. But we used the elevator, the staircase only used in the emergency of the elevators out of action. And it just went down, it's a square spiral staircase, it just went down and down and down. And you couldn't see where it led to, so it went down to several levels below. And we got in the lift and we come out. The numbers in the lift, it's just like an ordinary lift in a hotel or any other large building. Nothing special about it, it's just a plain aluminium floor. And nothing out of the ordinary. There's no mats or anything. It was just a push button system, which went from 1 to I think level 5. And we went down as low as it would go, level 5. Down in the 5th level, the first place they took us to.
Is there 5 levels in total?
No, it's 14.
14 levels.
14 levels.
And there's nothing underneath that?
Yes. There's tunnels that lead out to other underground cities and other locations. There's a whole network of underground tunnels and cities around most of the Earth, as far as I understand.
Okay.
From what we've been told from extraterrestrial sources. I haven't seen any of them, it's just we know they're there, and exactly where they go was unclear.
So when you went into Area 51, which levels did you go to?
Went down to level 5, and then worked from level 5 up to level 1, and then back up to ground level.
So you didn't go to the first 7 levels?
No.
Okay, the first 5 levels?
Yeah.
Okay. And what were on these 5 levels?
The first, on the 5th level, the first place they took us to was the interrogation centre, and it's right next door to the prison. And we had small greys in there being interrogated, and it was quite a ridiculous scenario there because they had these so-called psychics trying to glean information from these small greys, extraterrestrials, and the problem was their language is telepathic. Everything they communicate with is telepathic. These psychics didn't have the high enough level of frequency and vibration in order to be telepathic with the greys. They couldn't match the greys in their frequency, so they couldn't communicate. By telepathy was impossible. And they had like a system of hieroglyphics, pictures, where they could try and get the greys to understand what they were asking, and then they'd return their answer by using a combination of these hieroglyphs to try and do some rudimentary form of language, which works more or less to some degree, but is very, very slow and really ineffective. And you can see the frustration on the greys' faces. They were not happy by this experience at all, and they were repeatedly being asked the same question, which these are highly intelligent beings, and they felt, you could sense that they felt really frustrated because they couldn't communicate with these humans, and but they were trying desperately as all kinds of ridiculous stories and truths where we had a case I'd heard of where a grey was between two human guards, and they were desperately telling him to unload his weapon in their holsters.
What the grey was telling the...
Yeah, trying to by telepathy, because the human wasn't advanced enough telepathically. It was non-telepathic, so he couldn't understand or get to... He knew something was wrong, and that was about it, but he didn't know
Why
what it was.
did they want him to take his holster out of his...
Because they have a force field around them.
The Greys had a force
they
field?
They have a force field.
An energetic force
psychic
field?
Force field.
Okay.
And the psychic energy would set off the gun, which eventually happened, and the bullet ricocheted off the ground and went back into the guard, and he was killed. And he was desperately trying to save his life. There's that kind of communication difficulty between the Greys and humans. And the reptilians, the Dragonians, they don't even bother to communicate with the humans directly. They do it through the small Greys. Everything goes through the small Greys, and there's this hierarchy of leadership between them, running through the Dragonians, through the reptilians, down to the lower Greys, and then they have nothing to do with the medium Greys and the tall Greys. They are under the control of the medium grey, the small greys rather, because the small greys are their creators.
So the small greys create the medium and the tall greys?
Yes, because they can't reproduce. This is a situation we may find ourselves in one day in this planet. They lost their ability to produce. They gained in other areas of more higher consciousness and more interplanetary travel and experience and capabilities, so they lost their function with regards to reproduction. So that's why they come to Earth. They want to ask the US government for permission to do a genetic harvest of cattle, horses, mainly most four-legged large animals, so they could modify their own genetics, and hopefully so they could either reconstruct themselves or reproduce in a more natural method of conception, birth, that kind of thing.
So even though the government were interrogating these greys, these small greys,
yeah,
the greys still wanted to help the guards to detach their weapons so they wouldn't get killed, because they knew it was going to happen. So there was still this loving feeling of wanting to care for them, even though they were being interrogated.
Yeah.
So would you say that the grey species are a loving race, or a not an unconditionally loving race?
I would say they're a loving race, but they're also a race that are helping the Dragonians, or I think they're forced to help the Dragonian and reptilian races for control of the Earth, so they're allowed to remain in Area 51 to continue their research so they can reproduce themselves. They're struggling for survival.
So they're desperate and in fear.
They're desperate, and they're desperately doing what needs to be done to please the Dragonians and reptilian races so they can continue in their survival, their quest for survival.
What were the prison or the interrogation cells like in the prison cells when you were looking around?
They were large, quite big in size, probably 50 feet by 25 feet, rectangular in shape. Series of tables and chairs, pot plants, looked like very similar to an office, but minus the filing cabinets. There was one filing cabinet there with a small desk, when humans who are in charge of the interrogation would go in there. It's very dim light in there because, excuse me, they on their planet Shana, where they come from, they're a long distance from their star, and because their star is so large, it's larger than Jupiter. They have much dimmer light, and so they can't take the outside sun for long. It's painful, it hurts their eyes, the brightness of the sun. And even with artificial lighting, they have the same problem, a lot of pain in some cases. That's the only place that they experience pain.
And do they have legs?
Yeah.
Legs, arms, a body?
Yeah.
And how tall are they?
They're about 4'6".
Okay.
Some are shorter, some are 3 foot. They vary from 3 foot to 4'6".
And have they got fingers and toes?
They have 4 fingers. They have a small thumb, and the fingers are elongated. The arms, forearms and upper arms are very thin, and they have small torso, very thin, small legs, that their feet look oversized for the legs, but they're not in proportion as a human foot and leg would be. The feet look too big for the body, but the legs rather. The feet look too big for the legs, but it's in proportion with the body, as are the arms and the hands.
To keep them balanced.
Apart from the feet, they have.
Can they levitate?
No, but they have large proportionate heads to their bodies, and just a classic shape that people know on packets of crisps of the grey aliens with the round cranium and the thin jaw, and they have mouth. Well, they have teeth in the mouth. They're mainly vegetarians. They don't eat meat.
So they do consume food then?
Yes, they consume fruit and vegetables, which they have. There's some human vegetables that they can eat, but not very many. Mainly lettuce, carrot, peas.
So what vegetables do they eat? Like off-planet vegetables?
They eat some vegetables on Earth, but not much because it upsets their digestive system. They can eat fruit as well. They can manage bananas and pineapples.
Okay.
Apples make them so they get a lot of indigestion, lots of tummy ache problems with the harder, more firmer fruits, and the same thing with the firmer vegetables. And
do they drink?
Yes, they drink water, and they also drink fruit juices as well. They enjoy fruit juices. Like pineapple juice is a particular favourite of theirs. And they can bring their own planet food in, but they can't grow it here. It won't grow on the soil. They have a fruit which is round, about the size of an orange, but it's coloured yellow and tastes of pineapple and caramel mixed together.
Pineapple and caramel?
Yeah, and they grow in their world, like a tomato would grow on Earth.
Did you try?
No.
These vegetables?
No, we didn't get the chance. I did see them, but I didn't get the chance to try them because it was their food and they were hungry, and they have very good appetites. You know, they eat when they can because they worry about whether if they displease the reptilians or dragonians, they might stop their food supply or limit their food supply. It's that kind of situation. They're not free as people would believe. And they look forward to when they've done their time on Earth to go back to the rotated back to the moon.
And how long do they have to be here for?
Usually about 3 month rotation
between
Earth and the moon, and they keep continuing rotating while they're doing this research. They do both a porthole as well as they travel directly in their space-time machines. That's what they like to call them.
So they just
That's
from one place to another?
Yeah.
So they call them space-time machines, we call them UFOs?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason they call them space-time machines is because they literally jump from one part of the solar system, the galaxy to another. It's just a jump as far as they're concerned.
Instant?
Yeah. There's no instant. When they were through portal that's instant, but with their craft it's 72 Earth hours at the speed of 5 million times the speed of light.
Wow.
Or 980 billion miles per second.
And how can they sustain their health, and are they just accustomed to travelling at these speeds, or is there something inside their craft that makes this possible?
Their craft allows them, because of its size, they use a mothership, not the scout craft that people see in the air, because the mothership can't enter the Earth's atmosphere because it's harmful to the planet or the propulsion source. So they have to keep off planet, and they park them in orbit around the dark side of the moon for most of the time, or in deeper space where they can't be detected from beings from Earth with high-powered telescopes or radio telescopes. Radio telescopes send out signals that can endanger their systems on board. That's why they use the moon as a shield to park on the dark side of the moon, because it never faces the Earth.
So these greys, obviously, they're in fear of extinction. They're panicking because they need to reproduce and they can't. So they're working with humans on Earth, the government, to genetically splice with humans or animals, from what I understand. Now, obviously, the Draconians have got some kind of hold over the greys. and they're forcing them to do certain things, otherwise they could kick them out of Area 51 like you're saying. Is there any other kind of hold that the Draconians have got over the Greys? Have they been to their original planet 500 million light years away, or whatever it is? 500 light years away? Have they been there and created problems for them, or is it just because they're here in the same environment that they're taking control?
They are aware of their planet, because it's a dying planet. They don't really have any minerals, they don't have anything that they want, so they don't bother to go there. You see, the Dragonians, like most species, will only travel to another world if there's something there that they need or they want, or they can barter for, or they can give something else in return that those people who live there could need or could do with. So most beings tend to barter, like a bartering system, where people have maybe technology for minerals or for types of food that can be grown in the same, a different planet or a different environment, or anything that they might need.
So there's no money exchange going on
they don't
in
have
space.
a monetary system.
Just us here on Earth?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know of any that have a monetary system like people of Earth do.
I'm so grateful for Trevor coming forward and telling these stories. Imagine being on that plane with the military officers, armed up to the hilt, going to a place where you're not sure where you're going to, and then once you're told that it's Area 51, having a gun put into your side and told that if you ever spill the beans, you can have a bullet put in your head, or you're never going to make it out of this space. Imagine what that must be like. Remember, his wife and his daughter were back at the base, not knowing any of this. Unbelievable. Remember, you heard this first here on The Cosmic Truth. Yes, thank you so much for tuning in once again to this episode of The Cosmic Truth. These messages are so important. Why? Because they set you free. Knowledge, truth, wisdom. It's inside your own cosmic heart. It's deep within you. All we're doing with these shows is triggering information, light, frequency, vibration that you already know. Join us on next week's episode of Cosmic Truth so you can continue to unfold, expand, explore the depths of your own cosmic heart where all the truth lies.